What up guys, it's Dragon Ball for Life here today and I'm back with another video. Now today's video, I want to talk about the element of lightning slash electricity, and I want to go in depth and the different types of lightning based powers and to what extent that they can go to and different types of it. And I just want to give a whole analysis on how lightning powers would work and how they're shown and depicted in fiction, and just the nuances of having electricity as a superpower. Now I want to create a little mini series where I go through all the elements, like water, earth, wind, fire, lightning, ice, and plant and stuff. So I will be making multiple videos. I want to make a little mini series. So yeah, I'm gonna be making a playlist for this where I'm gonna be doing each one. The reason why I decided to do lightning or electricity as first is because I really like it. I think lightning, electricity is my favorite element out of all of them. It's just the coolest. It's so interesting. I just love the science of electricity and thunder and lightning. I just think it's very cool and an interesting subject that always piques my interest. So out of all the elements, it's my favorite. Though the other elements are still pretty cool, this is my favorite one. So yeah, let's get into the different types, I guess, or ways you can use electricity or electric based superpowers we've seen in in fiction. Now usually people who have elemental abilities, especially like electricity abilities, how can derive their powers from two ways. One, it's either through magic, so you have element users who are magical beings. So they might be a magical person who can cast like elements or use elements, or you have somebody who can use the elements or manipulate them through like kinesis, like hydrokinesis, electrokinesis, pyrokinesis, all these other forms of kinesis. And the way those ones work, or sometimes the way they work, is through just science based. So that's the two ways that you can look through elemental powers, is either through magic or through science, some pseudoscience usually. But I think it's always cooler when it's magic because it makes more sense. Because if you can, like, let's say shoot water out of nowhere, it's like, how are you supposed to do this? Even if we go with science fiction logic, you would need to draw water from another source, whereas with magic it makes sense of it comes out of nowhere. Same with any of the other stuff. But the superpowered version of it is also not too bad, if I'm being honest. So let's get into it. Now, what are the different types of electricity based powers you can have? There is one which is considered electrokinesis, and like I consider this class the kinesis class, where it's basically people who are able to manipulate those elements and use it to their benefits. Then there is the I would say, I guess you can say, amalgamation or living embodiment of those elements, and those are the beings that don't just control those elements, but are also can become those elements. So you have characters that, let's say, they use water, but they're also water themselves. Like in Spider-Man, you have I think his name was Hydro Man. Yeah, it was Hydro Man. He not only could use water, but he was made out of water. You have Sandman, who not only can control sand, but he is sand. And then you have people like Gaara and Naruto, who can control sand, but he is not made out of sand. He can create sand shells around him, but still he is physically, human. He can just control and manipulate sand itself. So that is completely different. And if you're a One Piece fan, you would know this definitely, because in One Piece, characters with those abilities are considered, I think, Logia users, where they basically become elements. So you have like a fire Logia type. That would mean that character doesn't just control like a fire; they are literally fire themselves. So you can't really hurt those characters in One Piece without Haki. Sorry if I mispronounced it. Haki, what the fuck? But Haki. That's the only way to harm somebody who's a Logia user in One Piece. Because usually, I mean, if you're an element like fire or water, how the hell are you supposed to hurt somebody like that? So the best way to hurt them is with Haki there. But in other fictions, they don't really use that. They usually just use scientific, like like knowledge or whatever, like water. Oh, let's just heat them up and evaporate them. Oh, they have fire. Let's trap them and make them burn out their flames, and then you beat them that way. Oh, they're made out of electricity. Use rubber and whatever. So that's how they usually handle them in that one. But like I said, those are the two basically different types: the pyros, and then I guess the ones the element. I don't know what to define this one as. I would say as the transformer ones. I don't know. I'll call these guys transformers because the elemental types, the pyrokinesis types, they can manipulate it, but they are still humans. So if you can manipulate lightning or fire and stuff like that, you can fire that, but you're still just made out of you're still human. But those other types that transform into that, they don't just are living embodiment versions of them. They don't just can you manipulate it? They are it. They are literally flames and stuff like that. Now they can work differently. Now both of these, depending on which type, I guess you can have pros and cons. I will say, on average, being able to be a living embodiment of electricity or the earth itself or wind and stuff is far more powerful than being a pyro. But there are some types and some cases where pyro users are far more, not pyro, kinesis users. Pyro's fire. Kinesis users are more powerful or proficient than even the beings that can turn into those. And that's for all the elemental beings. So that's a brief description on that. But when it comes to electricity type beings and stuff who can use electricity, it is a little bit more complex than the other elements, because depending on which element power a character uses, you will have a little bit of different levels of usability and complexity to their powers. And I think electricity is one of the most complex because it is not as simple as the other ones. And also there's another concept I want you guys to understand, and that is the concept of primary elements and secondary elements. Primary elements are just regular natural elements like earth, water, wind, and fire. Those are elements that are just prevalent throughout nature. But the secondary elements are a mixture of those primary elements. Like electricity, it's it's superheated up gas, so it would be like fire with wind. So that's how you get that. Same thing with plasma and electricity are basically the same thing, but it's a little confusing. I'm not going to get too much into the science of that, but it is basically the same thing. And then we have ice, which is basically like water, which is super cold and frozen. So like cold winds with water would create basically ice. And then plant is weird because you would assume that plant if you have earth or like people that can control rocks and stuff like that, they would have plant in it, but apparently plant-based powers are also different than that, so that's also considered a secondary power. And sometimes people put I want to say people, the only time I've seen them seen this be an element was the element of metal, and that was in the 2003 Ninja Turtle series, which it's an amazing series. It was dope. It's my favorite Ninja Turtle series of all time. It is just one of the best cartoons out there. If you guys know, you know. But yeah, they had the elemental types, and metal was one of them, which was weird because every time when I see fictional universes having elements, explained or shown, they never really mention metal, which it kind of does make sense to use metal because it is naturally occurring too, though scientists have created alloys, which is basically combinations of two different types of metals, which is man-made. But most metals are made throughout nature. They're not all man-made. It's just the more complex ones and the more useful ones are man-made. But most of these metal elements do exist, but they're rarely, if ever, considered an element. It's usually those other stuff. But yeah. So for electricity is really cool to me because there's so many things you can do with electricity as a superpower, and there's so many characters with electricity based powers, and they're some of the most they have some of the most versatile skill sets, and they're sometimes one of the most powerful, not the most powerful, but one of the most powerful characters in those universes. We have characters like Static Shock, Black Lightning, Cole McGrath from the Infamous series. There's possibly a couple more, but those are the three main ones that I know. These guys can not only fire electricity from their hands or wherever, they can like electrocute people or shock people or whatever, but they also can if they have a better I guess you can say a better control of their power or understanding of the power, they can do more than that. For example, in the Infamous series, Cole is able to pull out the electricity out of people's brains and hearts, basically killing them. So technically, if you have the ability of electrokinesis, you can take the electricity out of a person's brain or heart, so you can shut down their brain or shut down their heart control, which can basically kill them, which is pretty insanely powerful. Or you can use it to help people out, like how he also does if you choose his good side, whereas instead of he takes out the electricity to kill them or hurt them, he uses the electricity in his body to jumpstart somebody's heart, using himself as a defibrillator, jumping them back up. Also, these beings, since electricity is all over us, we have technology everywhere, they can also replenish their power and regain their strength by just absorbing electricity around them. Now, unless if they're in a rural area where there's barely any electricity, yeah, they'll be in a bad position, but if they're in like a city and stuff with a lot of technology, they can just absorb technology from the electricity from there. Also, if you have like electrokinesis and stuff, you can basically fully charge up your phone just like that. And you wouldn't need a charger. You can charge it whenever. That would be pretty dope, if I'm being honest. So yeah, just the kinesis side of it is very powerful. But now we get into the living embodiment version, where it's basically, instead of you just controlling lightning, they are lightning themselves, and they basically are living embodiments of lightning. And the reason why I didn't use Electro from Spider-Man, who is usually the most iconic electric user and fiction, the reason I didn't mention him earlier was because he's not a pyro technically. Sometimes he is, sometimes he isn't, but he's mainly usually a living embodiment of electricity. So what I mean by that is he's usually completely fully electrical being. He does assume the form of a regular man, but he is purely electricity. He can go through electrical wiring, so he moves like electricity. And this is important because electrokinesis beings, they can use electricity to attack people or for mobility or whatever, or to do different crazy things with it. And there's many applications to using electricity as a superpower, which like I said, I'll go more in depth into it. But those guys, they are very powerful, but I think being able to be a living embodiment of electricity is more powerful. Why do I say that? Because you can do basically all the other stuff that they do, but also when you absorb the electricity, you can get bigger and stronger, and you wouldn't have a limit to how much electricity you absorb. The more electricity you absorb, the bigger and bigger you become. Whereas if you're a pyro, you might not be able to, because some pyros might not be able to absorb it. For example, there's not pyros, kinesis. Not pyro, yeah, kinesis. Because you have pyrokinesis, electrokinesis, hydrokinesis. Sorry if I get that mixed up. Usually when I hear kinesis, it's always together with pyrokinesis. I rarely hear electrokinesis or hydrokinesis. But those are also the terms. But yeah, the kinesis abilities, sometimes it's weird because sometimes these people can only use their power if they're next to a source that has it. For example, in the X-Men, I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but one of the X-Men guy, he's a he has pyrokinetic powers, and he cannot use his powers without a heat source. So he usually carries a lighter with him. So he uses that lighter and controls it to burn people. Whereas some other pyrokinesis people, they might be they can manipulate fire, but they wouldn't really need to carry it around with them. So it can be a little confusing. But those characters, usually they do that, have magic. They have their powers, elemental powers connected to magic, and I'll explain that on why that's the case. But like I said, being a living embodiment of an element is far more powerful than just manipulating that element. Because if you're made out of electricity, how are you supposed to get hurt? If you're physical and you're firing electricity, you're still powerful, but all the person has to do is hit you physically, if they knock you out or take you down or stab you or, you know, harm you in some way, shape or form, then you're basically going to be taken out, and you wouldn't be able to move at the speeds, because people think that, oh, they can use a lightning. That doesn't mean that they can move at lightning unless they can, you know, form into lightning, which would lend more to, you know, being the living embodiment of lightning instead of being just a pyro or electrokinesis being. So yeah, they're usually like for electricity, especially because when you go to like fire and stuff like that, speed doesn't really change. But if you're being made out of electricity, you would be moving at the speed of electricity, which some people get wrong. They say that electricity is 1/3 the speed of light. It's not. I made a whole video about this. Electricity actually moves at 1/1000th the speed of light, which is still pretty fast if I'm being honest. I mean, that would put it at 220,000 miles per hour. So imagine it. If you were to move at electricity speed, you'd be moving at 220,000 miles per hour, which is like, I think over Mach 200 something. So you'd be massively hypersonic plus. So yeah, that's actually really good. So if you're a pyrokinetic, you could a being that uses electricity could probably move faster than that. Or move at those speeds, but they would have to have additional powers with the ability to manipulate electricity. With just the power of manipulating electricity alone, they will not be able to go that speed. They will be able to use their electricity in cool ways, like how Static Shock is able to use some, like, I think in the beginning of the show, he used a sewer lid, and then his friend devised this metal thingy, this metal like plate thingy, which he used to fly with, which is pretty cool. And Cole usually flies with his electricity in the ground, or glides on power lines, which is also pretty cool. But if you could turn into electricity, you would be moving at 220,000 miles per hour, which is massively hypersonic plus, which would increase your speed, make you you cannot be physically harmed, and if the person does hit you, they will be getting hurt. So every time they hit you, they wouldn't be damaging you because you can't take physical damage since you're not physical anymore, but also you'll be hurting the other person. So yeah, that's a pretty cool power. Now the only downside to it that I'll say, and the reason why I say that if you're a pyro, or not pyro, sorry, if you have the ability of kinesis, which is basically manipulation of certain elements, if you have that ability, like I said, you could do some crazy things. But let's be honest, if you can become pure lightning, you can move at the speed of lightning, you will not be physically harmed, and if they do hit you, they'll be getting hurt. But if you have like just rubber, and let's say there's like electricity going through, if you trap them in a completely rubber area, they'll basically be grounded. Or if there's just like rock, they'll be also basically grounded, and there's nothing they can do, and they'll basically end up dying. So if you trap them in a rubber room, since it's an insulator, they will start to dissipate. Or you can throw water on them, and then they can like, you all see in the shows and the comics, they short circuit or whatever. You can do the same thing to an electrokinesis person. Use rubber to protect against their attack, or earth to ground their attack, or water to short circuit them. But here's the thing: when it comes to those kinesis users, those guys don't really die by it. Yes, that will you can stop them from them using their power against you. You can hurt them and take them out, but it doesn't kill them. Whereas a person that is made out of pure electricity, if they hit an insulated material like rubber, or grounded material like rock and stuff, or they're taken out by water, they do not just get incapacitated, they literally die, because they don't have a physical form. That is their physical form. So if you take out that physical form of theirs, then they're dead. Whereas the kinesis users, they might be more limited and they might be weaker, but at least the way you beat them is not going to kill them unless you choose to kill them. But otherwise, they're fine. Now, the reason why I say that kinesis users might be stronger is it really depends. If it's like say your power is super power based compared to magic based, that there's also a key difference, because beings that can manipulate the elements through superpowers are powerful, but they still need an additional outsource to use that power. So like electricity, they can't just fire electricity out of nowhere. They'll have to use their own body's electrical current, or charge it up through, like, you know, how we do through like a rug and stuff, or taking electricity from around them. But luckily for electric users, compared to the other, not all the other elemental users, but some of the other elemental users, it's a lot easier to, it's not that much of a problem, because there's electricity everywhere around us. Our entire world runs on electricity, so it's very easy to find electrical sources to use your powers from. But if they don't have you know, a place where they can use it from, then they'll be very limited on, you know, how powerful their attacks will be, or how much they can use their powers. The only other, you know, elements that I can see they can use it to that level would be Earth, because Earth is literally everywhere. There's nowhere you can stop them unless they're in deep space. And wind, because there's wind all around us. Some of you might say, well, what about water? But unless you're around next bodies of water, or you have water at hand, then yeah. But also maybe you can control people's blood and urine or whatever, so that could also work, or the fluid in their heads. So that's also pretty insanely OP. But electricity is very, you know, everywhere around us. The only other ones that I say that have more of an abundance and is less of a limitation is wind and earth, because that's literally everywhere. But the thing is, it's still annoying to have to drive from someplace, especially if it's an element that isn't naturally occurring easily, like fire. Fire, you have to make it. It takes quite a bit of work to get fire. So the reason why the guy from the X-Men carried a lighter was because, unlike electricity or earth or wind, you're not going to have that everywhere around you. Fire is very limited in where it's going to be, unless you're standing next to a burning building, a forest fire, a stove or something. You're not going to be able to do it. So carrying a lighter or a torch or whatever, you can use that fire, but it's still kind of annoying. The water one, like I said, it's not too bad actually, if I'm being honest now I think of it. You can use the air moisture from the air and stuff like that. So if you're smart enough, you can use water very usefully, but it'll still be pretty limited. Wind and earth, I think, definitively have the best, when it comes to that, because you're not very that limited. And electricity is very decently well, at least. But fire, it's in the worst position. Fire and ice and shit like that is worse. But when it comes to magical based beings, it's better. Why? Because magical based beings, they don't need those additional sources. They can bring out those elements out of nowhere. Like, for example, in Naruto, I know they don't use magic, they use chakra, but let's be honest, it might as well just be magic, because they're using water out of nowhere. They're using fire out of nowhere. They're using lightning and stuff out of nowhere. And that's because it's kind of like magic. And usually when you see elemental users that have their powers for magic, they don't need to, be around an electrical source or around the earth or any of that. These guys can conjure these elements out of nowhere. They can literally conjure it in existence out of nowhere. So these guys that use magical fire, they wouldn't need to carry a lighter or anywhere. They can create the fire. So yes, wind and earth, it isn't that much of a hindrance, but still, having the magical ability to bring that out of nowhere is still significantly better. And that's why I would say that it's sometimes better than, the living embodiment version of the elemental powers, because you might have that, but like I said, of the methods to stop them will also be the methods to kill them. Whereas the kinesis users, the methods to stop them won't be killing them. It will just stop them from using their power, and they would be limited onto because they're manipulating it. They're not they're not that thing. Now, obviously, scientifically, you have like with water, we have water within our body. 70% of our body's water, so you can still use it in a certain way, but it would be weird to draw out the water from your body. But you're limited there unless you're the elemental powers are for magic, because then they can literally bring them out of existence, and that explains it. It really makes no sense for it really makes no sense when there's a character who got their elemental powers from some science reason, and they're able to shoot out water out of nowhere. It's like, what the fuck? Unless you're made out of water, how are you doing this? You have to be near a source of water. But if they have magic, then you don't need questions. Like, well, it's magic. It just comes out of a magical realm where these elements come from. That's it. So you can have that. But yeah, It really depends. I do think it's cool. Elemental powers are cool, though I do think they're kind of overused. And especially for magic, if you have any magic abilities, having elemental magical abilities could be kind of cool. But let's be honest, if I have magic, I wouldn't really care about elemental powers because it's like really you can control the elements or that this and that. You can do so much more with magic than elements. The elemental stuff is usually lower level magic, but it's still pretty interesting, as a superpower and stuff. So I will be making a series on the other ones, and I will be touching upon them, but lightning based powers are super cool. If you check out the game Infamous 1 and 2, you would see why lightning is super electricity and lightning are super crazy because of the shit you can do with it. It's just so crazy what you can do with it. And how powerful it can be. You can burn people with it, you can electrocute them, you can kill them, you can take electricity from them, you can, take electricity from an area, like let's say you're in a building, there's a bunch of assailants, take electricity from there, and the power's out, they can't see you and stuff. So there's so many applications to it that can be used. And it's just a very cool thing, so yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed, and stay tuned for next time.